My name is Afton Yeager, and I'm 67 years old. I was standing in the back row at my son's grand opening when he took the microphone and told 60 of our neighbors that since my wife died, his dad had gotten to be kind of a burden. They laughed. Good people, all of them. 4 seconds, and I stood there in an iron shirt and shined shoes and laughed with them. 2 years before that, I came off a ladder with one arm in a cast. My son moved back in for a month. My family stayed 26. Somewhere in there I gave away one password. 10 minutes later, a man I'd never seen walked up to me in the parking lot and asked if I was Afton R. Yeager. Before I take you back, please take a moment to like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I never raised my voice. Not one time. Let me take you back to March of 2024, the morning I came off that ladder. It was 6 below on the 9th of March, and the gutters on the north side had grown a lip of ice as thick as my wrist. Marguerite used to stand at the storm door and tell me not to go up there alone. She'd been gone 5 months by then, so nobody stood at the door. I got 4 rungs up. The ladder foot slid on the frozen slab, and the whole thing went out from under me like a card being pulled. I landed on packed snow that had no give left in it. I heard something in my wrist and something in my ribs, and then I was quiet for a long time, looking sideways at the dogwood she planted in 1991. 40 minutes I lay there, long enough to watch the shade cross the yard. Vera Lindahl came out for her mail across the road, saw a ladder down and no man attached to it, and started running in house slippers at 71 years old. The ambulance took me to Holland's Regional, left wrist broken in 2 places, 2 cracked ribs. No driving for 6 weeks, no lifting for 8. The emergency room bill came to $4,318 out of pocket, and I remember thinking that was almost exactly what I'd paid for my first truck. That first night home, I sat at the kitchen table with a bottle of pills I could not open. One hand, child-proof cap. I worked at it for 11 minutes. Then I set it down and looked around at a house with nobody in it to ask. The fall isn't what changed my life. I want to be clear about that. It was the phone call 3 days later. The screen lit up on the kitchen table. It said Dalton. The U-Haul pulled in on the 16th. My son came up the walk first, then Kendra, then a 7-year-old carrying a nightlight shaped like a rocket ship with both arms like it was a casserole. "Just a month, Dad," Dalton said, "till you're back on your feet." I believed him. I want you to understand I was grateful. I'd been eating cereal standing up at the counter for 5 months. Bo took Dalton's old room. That night I heard water running upstairs and a kid laughing at something on a tablet, and the house made noise again for the first time since October. 2 days later, the hospital bill came due. I sat down at the laptop with one hand and could not make it work. Passwords, then a code texted to me, then a second screen. I hunted for the letters. My ribs hurt when I leaned forward. Kendra set down a dish towel. "Just tell me the password, I'll pay it tonight." So I said it out loud, right there in my own kitchen over the sound of the dishwasher. She paid it. She printed the confirmation and put it under the salt shaker, where I'd see it in the morning. I thanked her twice. While Dalton was hauling boxes in from the truck, one split at the bottom of the stairs, envelopes fanned across the floor. Bank letterhead. Red stamp across the front of 3 of them. Final notice. He kicked them under the bed with the side of his boot and grinned at me. "Old stuff," he said. I let it go. He'd driven 11 hours. A man's allowed some old stuff. I didn't think about it again until much later, when I was going back through everything and noticed something small. The U-Haul was a one-way. I'll say the true part because if I skip it, none of the rest makes sense. That first month was good. Bo found his grandmother's dead reading lamp in the hall closet and wanted to know what was inside it. So I sat him at the workbench and taught him rule number 1, the one they beat into you before they let you near a pole. "Kill the power first," I told him. "Then you check. Never the other way." He said it back to me 4 times that afternoon, like a boy learning a prayer. Kendra cooked, real food on plates. Dalton shoveled the walk and hauled the trash cans up the hill. I slept through the night for the first time since the funeral. And I need to tell you about a Tuesday in September of 2023 in a room at Holland's Regional with the blinds half shut. Marguerite weighed 96 pounds. She had 11 weeks from diagnosis to the end, and she used one of her last clear hours on our son. Don't let him drift again, Afton. I said I wouldn't. You say yes to a woman in that bed. You don't negotiate. That promise is the chain. Everything that happened over the next 2 years, I hooked to that one sentence and I carried it. What mattered to me then was simple. The house Marguerite picked out in 1991 with the crooked back step we never fixed. The pension I traded 34 winters for, and that boy at my workbench. In the kitchen drawer next to the flatware there was a spiral notebook and her pen. I used it to track my pain pills so I wouldn't double up. At the end of the month, nobody mentioned moving out. I didn't ask either. May, June, July. The leaks started so small I had to squint to see them. A gas card charge on a Tuesday I hadn't left the house. Grocery totals that doubled and stayed doubled. Kendra dropped her on-call shifts at the clinic because she said Bo needed somebody home. In July, I sat down with a paper statement. Savings had gone from $31,400 to $29,100. I asked about it at dinner. Careful. Light. Bo's dentist, Kendra said, and passed the beans. I felt bad for asking. That's the part I'd like back, the apology I gave for asking about my own account. Around then, my son started saying we about my money. Not once, steadily. We should probably move some money around, he'd say, standing at my refrigerator. Vera caught me at the mailbox in August. She'd been counting. 3 vehicles in the drive of a man who lives alone, she said. I told her they were helping. She said nothing back, which from Vera is a whole speech. Then there was the thing I saw on a Thursday. I had a follow-up in Ashford and took the county road. Dalton's truck was parked at the far end of the lot at Marlow Bend Building Supply. Nose out, radio going. It was 10:20 in the morning, and he'd left the house at 6:40 in work boots with a lunch cooler. I drove past. I did not stop. At 4 o'clock he came in the door and said the crew got rained out. There hadn't been a cloud all day. I lay awake that night with one question I couldn't set down. Why would a grown man, out of work, bother pretending to go to work for his own father? Vera came across with a coffee cake in September and would not come inside. She stood on the porch with it, which is how you know a woman intends to say something. 1 month has been 5 months, she said. Have you talked to him? I gave her my defense. I'd had it loaded for a while. 34 years of 60-hour weeks, ice storms at 2 in the morning. I missed the boy's whole 8th grade season. I missed his graduation because a substation went down in Ashford County, and somebody had to climb. I owe him some years, I said. 29 years I sat in that clerk's office, Vera said. I have watched a lot of people collect on a debt like that. And they always collect one time too many. I told her that around here we don't put family business out on the road. It came out harder than I intended. She took it without flinching because she's 71 and I'm 67 and neither of us had time for a performance. She handed me a business card, an old one, soft at the corners. Delia Brandt, attorney, Ashford. On the back, in blue pen, a cell number. For when you need somebody who isn't family, she said. I put it in the junk drawer under the tape measure. I want to be honest, I did not intend to use it. I kept it the way you keep a fuse you'll probably never need. That night I sat down to look at my own account. I typed the password I'd been using since 2016. Wrong. I typed it again, slower, one finger watching each letter land. Wrong. I sat in the blue light of that screen for a long minute in a house full of people, feeling like I'd been locked out of a room in my own home. Kendra explained it at breakfast, cheerful, buttering toast. I reset it. You kept locking yourself out. I had to call them 3 times. I hadn't locked myself out once. I let that sit. She wrote the new password on the back of a receipt and slid it over. I copied it into the spiral notebook in the kitchen drawer. Her pen. September 14th, 2024. That's the first line in it that isn't about pain pills. That night, I logged in for the first time in 4 months, and I went through it the way I used to go through a storm log. Slow, line by line. No conclusions until the end. There were 11 automatic payments coming out of my account that I had not set up. A truck loan, $641. Insurance on that truck. 2 streaming services. A gym in Ashford County, 22 miles away. A phone plan with 4 lines on it, and I only use one. A subscription box. Something called a membership I never did identify. And a storage unit. The name on the storage unit wasn't Jaeger. It was Pruitt. I sat back in the chair. Pruitt is Kendra's mother, and Kendra's mother has been in a nursing home in Ashford since 2022. I didn't say anything. Not that night, not for a long time after. I want to be straight with you about why, because people always want that to be about fear. It wasn't. 34 years on a line crew teaches a man exactly one habit. You write down what you see, even when you don't know yet what it means. You don't argue with a fault until you've traced it. So I got out the notebook and I started a second page, and I began to wonder what was inside a storage unit my pension was paying for. March of 2025, 1 year to the week. My wrist had healed the previous summer. I'd been driving since May. I could carry a bag of softener salt up the basement stairs without setting it down. I waited for a good night. Pot roast everybody fed Bo happy about something at school. I think it's time we talked about the long term, I said. Dalton set down his fork. You're putting my kid out on the road? That's not what I said. Do you know where you'd be without us? He wasn't loud. That's the thing people get wrong. He was hurt. Sunrise Meadows, plastic mattress, somebody knocking to check on you. Kendra started crying into her napkin quietly, which is worse than loud. Bo stopped chewing and looked at his plate, and I apologized. 66 years old at my own table, and I said I was sorry for bringing it up. I did the dishes alone afterward. Cold water makes that wrist ache. It aches every March now, and it always will. Later I took the trash out, and they were on the porch talking low, not knowing sound carries through a screen door in the spring. We need to get things in his name sorted, Kendra said, before the 5-year window. He's not going to sign anything, Dalton said. He signs whatever I hand him. I stood in my own dark yard holding a garbage bag. I didn't know what a 5-year window was. I want to be clear on that. I had no idea. It sounded like insurance. It sounded like nothing. I went inside, got the notebook out of the drawer, and copied the sentence down, word for word, the way I'd log a reading I didn't understand yet. March 11, 2025, 5-year window. Then I underlined it because I did not like the sound of it. May of 2025, I got a paper statement out of the mailbox before anyone else did, and I took it out to the truck to open it. Savings, $6,400, 14 months, $25,000. I sat in the driveway until the windows fogged. Then I came inside, put on coffee, and worked at that kitchen table for 4 hours the way I'd work a fault report. Statements printed at the library, 20 cents a page, notebook open, her pen. Month by month I built it back. The gas, the groceries, the truck note, the gym in a county I've never driven to. And then, on a February line, something I did not recognize. A draw of $7,500 against the home equity line. I opened that line in 2019 to reshingle the roof. Used $4,000, paid it off in a year and left it at zero. Like a spare key over a door frame. My hand shook writing the number down. It's not a nice thing to see about yourself, a shake like that. I wrote it anyway. There were 2 questions in that number, and I only had the nerve for the first one that night. The first was, who took it? The second was worse. I pulled the loan document at the credit union that Tuesday and looked at the signature line. It was mine. Not traced, not copied, mine. The A that never closes, the way I've written it since basic bookkeeping in 1976. I started keeping 2 records after that. The notebook stayed in the kitchen drawer. The photocopies went out to the shop in the bottom of the toolbox, under a roll of electrical tape. I'm not a suspicious man. I'm a documenting man. There is a difference, and it is the only reason I'm still in this house. Here's what I cut so I wouldn't have to cut my son. The supplemental insurance went first, then the crown the dentist had scheduled since February. I told him summer, and then I told him fall. I asked the pharmacy for generics, and they saved me $31 a month, and I was grateful for it. In June, I sold my climbing gear: hooks, belt, gaffs. Marguerite polished that belt every Christmas Eve for 22 years like it was a saddle. A young lineman out of the Ashford local gave me $300 and told me it was the best set he'd ever handled. I told myself Beau had just finished 3rd grade. He had a best friend for the first time in his life. You don't pull a tree up in the middle of the season. Curtis Vandenberg called 3 times about the retiree breakfast. I said no 3 times. I didn't want to sit across from men who'd known me at 30 and let them look at my face. Then the young lineman said something while he was loading the gear in his truck. "Your boy told everybody at the counter you were selling up." He shut the tailgate. "Said you can't manage the place anymore." I said something polite. I don't remember what. I drove home the long way, past the co-op yard, past the substation. I climbed in the ice storm of '98. And I understood for the first time that I was not in a money problem. I was in a story problem. Somebody was telling a story about me in the place where I've bought nails for 40 years, and I hadn't heard a word of it. I can go without a crown on a molar. I found out that summer I could not go without being believed. Saturday afternoon, the rocket ship lamp finally quit for good, and Beau carried it out to the shop like a hurt animal. I let him do the soldering. 9 years old, tongue out the side of his mouth, hands steady enough after the 3rd try. The smell of rosin filled the shop, and for about 20 minutes I was a completely happy man. "Grandpa," he said, not looking up, "how come you never argue back at my dad?" I did not have an answer for a 9-year-old. I still don't have a good one. "Hold it level," is what I said. Then Dalton came in with his phone up. "There he is! There's the 2 of them!" He took the picture and left. He posted it that night. 240 likes by Sunday. The caption said something about taking care of his dad every single day, and 6 people from church wrote underneath what a good son he was. Kendra read the comments out loud at breakfast. Dalton put his hand on my shoulder when he passed the chair. I looked at that picture for a long time. Me with the iron in my right hand and the lamp base in my left. Both hands dead steady. Reading glasses on, eyes clear. I saved it to my phone. I couldn't have told you why then. It was a Saturday, and I was tired, and I saved a picture of myself, and I started to notice how carefully my son was building something in public. Every week another photo. Every week another comment about what he was carrying. A man doesn't build a record like that for the neighbors. He builds it for somebody who's going to read it later. Hollins County Credit Union is 1 room, 2 tellers, and Marlene Kupfer at the desk by the window. 19 years. She sang at Marguerite's funeral. I told her I wanted to understand my own account, not fix it, understand it. She pulled it up and turned the monitor toward me, which is more than she had to do. "Afton, look at the title, sole ownership, Afton R. Yeager, that has never changed." "They're on it." "They're not on it." She tapped the screen twice. "They have your login. There's a secondary debit card. That's convenience access. It isn't legal authority. There's no power of attorney in this file. There's no joint owner." I sat with that. "So what does that mean?" I said. "It means one person on this earth can end all of it." She let that land. "Change the credentials, kill the cards, cancel the automatic payments. 40 minutes at this desk." She slid a form across. "I can't start it, Mr. Yeager. We're trained to watch for this. I've been watching. But I can't move first." She held my eyes. "You'd have to say it out loud." I looked at that piece of paper for about 3 minutes. It had my name printed at the top already. Then I thought about a 9-year-old with a soldering iron and about a woman in a hospital bed saying, "Don't let him drift." I folded the form in half, then in half again, and put it in the inside pocket of my work coat. She didn't push. She's a professional. That form stayed in that pocket for 11 months. I put that coat on every cold morning for 11 months and felt it against my chest and did nothing. She wasn't asking me to be cruel. She was asking me to be the account holder. Turns out, those had become 2 different men. I tried a second time in the shop in October with the door pulled down. I brought 3 numbers. I read them off the notebook. 25,000 from savings, 7,500 off the equity line, 11 automatic payments. Dalton laughed once with no humor in it. "You're counting on your own son?" I'm reading you a list. I gave up my whole life to come here. He stepped in. He's 4 inches taller than me. You want a receipt? Fine. I'll get you a receipt. Kendra was in the doorway inside of 30 seconds, which told me she'd been in the breezeway the whole time. She said her mother's facility was talking about a transfer. She cried. She's good at it, and I don't think all of it is fake, which is its own kind of problem. The next morning there were $400 bills on the kitchen table under the salt shaker squared up neat. Dalton stood there with his coffee waiting. See, we're square, he said. I thanked him. I want you to know I thanked him. That night, I opened the account and ran the previous day. ATM withdrawal, $400. Marlo Ben Sunoco, 7:42 in the morning. My son had taken $400 out of my account, walked it into my kitchen, laid it on my table, and stood there waiting for me to be grateful. I read that line about 6 times. Then I got the notebook and wrote it down with the time and the location, the way I'd log a reading. And in the margin, for the first time in 14 months, I wrote one word. Enough. I looked at it a while. Then I put a line through it because Bo had a science fair Thursday, and a boy should get his science fair.
Not yet, but I'd written it. Let me step out a second because people get this part wrong about me. I wasn't weak. I was doing math. How much does peace cost this month and can I cover it? Every month I ran it and every month I paid. If you've ever run that math for somebody you love, you already know how this ends. Hit that like button and tell me in the comments what was the moment you finally stopped paying. I read them. I'm learning. I wasn't the only man keeping a notebook. Back to it. August of 2025, a church breakfast I didn't want to go to. Curtis Vandenberg quit calling and just showed up in my driveway at 7 in the morning, which is how that generation handles a man who's gone quiet. The retiree breakfast is in the basement of the Methodist church. Powdered eggs, bad coffee, 22 men who all still stand up too straight. Curtis got to talking about a fellow whose direct deposit went sideways, and he explained the mechanics the way he explains everything, with his hands flat on the table. A pension goes where the retiree says it goes. One form, a voided check, 10 business days. That's all of it? That's all of it. The fund doesn't care whose house you sleep in. He tore off a piece of his roll. A pension follows the man, Afton, not the address. Then he told me about Ray Dowdy from our crew. Ray's daughter went to court, filed a petition, said he couldn't manage his affairs. The court agreed. 6 months later, Curtis said, Ray had to ask her permission to buy a winter coat. I made him say the word twice. Guardianship, he said. He wrote it on a napkin with a pen from his shirt pocket and pushed it over and went back to his eggs like he'd handed me the salt. I drove home with that napkin on the passenger seat and I did not put the radio on. 2 things were sitting in my head now, side by side, and they had not been side by side before. A folded form in my coat pocket, 11 months old, and a word for what a family can do to a man on paper in a courthouse with his own money. I put the napkin in the notebook, and I closed it, and I still did nothing. That's the part I'd change if I could. In November, Dalton announced he was going into business. Yeager and Son Hauling and Site Services. He had a bay lined up on Route 41 Gil Tanner's building, the one with the roll door and the gravel lot. He was lit up about it. He hadn't been lit up about anything in 2 years, and God help me, I liked seeing it. A Tuesday night, 9:30, Kendra brought a stack of papers to the table with a glass of iced tea. Home insurance and the co-op renewal, she said. Sign where the tabs are. I'd been under the sink with a basin wrench for an hour. My eyes were done. There were 6 little colored tabs. I signed 6 times. 3 pages under the last tab was a personal guarantee. 36-month commercial lease. $2,150 a month. Nobody forged anything. I want that understood because it matters to how I behaved afterward. That is my signature, put there by my own hand in my own kitchen in blue ink. That's why I never told Vera. That's why I stopped going to the hardware store on Saturdays. Shame will keep a man quieter than fear ever will. 2 weeks later, he was showing me the business account on his phone at the counter. I asked which bank. Same as yours, it's easier. It wasn't a business account at all.
It was my account, with a display name typed into a field. That's the whole company. A nickname on my checking. He got the keys to the bay on December 4th and stood in the middle of that empty concrete floor with his arms out. And I stood there doing the arithmetic nobody else in the room was doing. 36 months. 2,150. If it fails, who pays it? It started at the hardware store with a girl at the register I've known since she was in a stroller. She began speaking to me slowly, loudly, the way you talk to somebody through a door. Your total is $12.60. Then the fellow at the post office asked if I needed help reading my mail, not unkindly. That was the worst of it. Nobody in Marlow Bend was unkind to me that winter. They were gentle, and they were gentle in a way you're gentle with somebody who's leaving. Vera finally told me what was going around. That Dalton's carrying his father, that the poor kid put his life on hold. I did what a proud man does, which is nothing useful. I got a haircut, I ironed shirts, I drove myself everywhere, and made sure people saw me drive myself. Nobody saw. A town doesn't check facts. A town checks who talked first. Then in January, I was in the aisle at the building supply and heard Bonnie Stack from the chamber talking to my son about the ribbon cutting. Your situation is why the board went for it, she said. The photographer's coming. People love this. Your situation. I stood there holding a package of drywall screws. The story about my decline had become a marketing asset. It was bringing in a photographer. It was putting a mayor at a folding table. I put the screws back on the shelf and walked out to the truck and sat there, and I asked myself the question that finally started to move me. If a lie about a man is making money for the people telling it, who exactly is going to stop telling it? January 9th, 2026. Kendra offered to drive me to my checkup to save me the trip. Dr. Farrell had one hand on the door when she said it. While we're here, I'd like to talk about Dad's memory concerns. I was sitting 18 inches from her. Dr. Farrell is 55 and has been doing this a long time. He didn't take it from her. He turned his chair to face me. Afton, would you like a cognitive screen? It's about 10 minutes. Yes, I said, today. So we did it. Draw the clock, name the animals, copy the cube, repeat 5 words back after a delay. 29 out of 30. I missed 1 word on the recall. I'd like to tell you it was age. It was because during that 10 minutes, I was thinking about a storage unit in Ashford with the name Pruitt on the invoice and how I'd never once asked what was in it. Dr. Farrell printed the result and signed the bottom. Kendra's face while that printer ran is a thing I'll keep. She smiled the entire time. It never reached anything. I folded the page in half and put it in the inside pocket of my work coat next to a form I'd been carrying since March. On the drive home, she called somebody from the passenger seat with me right there. No, he was tested today. There's definitely something. We'll have it for the file. The file. Nobody says the file about a doctor visit. You say the results. You say the paperwork. I looked out the window at the fields, going by all that flat frozen ground I've strung wire across, and I understood that a file is a thing you build for a room with a judge in it. The paper statements stopped coming in February. I switched everything to electronic, Kendra said. Less clutter. I drove into town on a Wednesday and rented a post office box, number 44. $32 a quarter, paid cash out of my wallet. Then I filed a change of address with the credit union, with the pension fund, and with Social Security. My own hand, my own signature, at 3 separate counters. I didn't tell a soul. Not Vera, not Curtis. For the first time in 23 months, I owned something in that house that nobody else could open. While I was at the credit union, I asked Marlene for something else. I want every statement since March of 2024. She didn't ask why. She printed for 11 minutes, then she put the whole thing in a black spine binder and slid it across the desk with both hands, the way you hand somebody a folded flag. 26 months. You all right, Afton? I want the whole shape of it, I said. If I'm going to be ashamed, I'd like to be ashamed of the actual size. I drove home and put the binder in the toolbox in the shop, under the electrical tape with the photocopies. Coming back across the gravel, I noticed something leaned against the shop wall, under a tarp that had slipped. A sign. Vinyl, 8 feet of it, blue field, gold letters still curled from the roll. Yeager and Son. I stood in my own driveway in the cold, looking at my last name and my father's last name and his father's with an ampersand somebody had added to it without asking me. And I thought, that word doesn't mean I'm included. It means my name is the collateral. They set the ribbon cutting for Saturday, April 11:10 in the morning. Chamber of Commerce, the mayor, Pastor Rowe to say a word, a photographer from the Hollins County Ledger. I asked Dalton where he wanted me to stand. He was scrolling his phone. Just hang back, Dad. Light's bad up front. He didn't even look up to say it. That's the piece I keep. It wasn't cruelty, it was scheduling. The Thursday before, I couldn't sleep. I got up at 2 and sat at the kitchen table with the binder from the shop and the notebook and her pen, and I did the thing I'd been avoiding for 2 years. I added it all up. Savings drawn down, the equity line, 26 months of automatic payments and transfers and card charges that weren't mine. $71,480. I wrote it at the bottom of the page and drew 2 lines under it, the way you close out a job. I've read storm damage reports for 30 years. I know what a number looks like when it's about to fall on somebody. Then I kept going, because I was still awake, and I ran the current month. And there it was, 9 days back. $1,850, paid to Ardwick and Pell Attorneys at Law, Ashford, out of my account. I sat in that kitchen at 3:10 in the morning, with the refrigerator humming. My son had used my money to hire a lawyer. Not a lawyer for the business had a lease and a sign and nothing else. A lawyer costs $1,850 when he's about to file something. I closed the notebook. 2 days later, I put on an iron shirt and shined my shoes and drove out to Route 41. 60 people near enough. 2 folding tables with paper cloths, donuts from Ridgway's Coffee that had been on too long. Red ribbon across the roll door. The oversized scissors, the chamber loans out. The sign was up. The bubble in the bottom corner hadn't been rolled out. Bonnie Stack spoke. The mayor spoke. Pastor Rowe asked a blessing on the work of our hands. Then my son took the microphone, and it gave one short whine of feedback, and everybody went quiet and looked at him at exactly the same moment. He thanked the town, he thanked Kendra, he got a laugh about the gravel lot. Then he said it. And since we lost my mom, my dad's been kind of a burden, but hey, that's what family's for, right? They laughed. 4 seconds. Friendly. Pastor Rowe laughed. The girl from the hardware store laughed. Gil Tanner slapped his knee. That's the part I want you to understand. Nobody was cruel. 60 of my neighbors just agreed with him out loud all together in about the time it takes to check a fuse. The camera shutter went off twice, and out at the edge of the crowd my grandson turned around and looked at me. Bo did not laugh. 9 years old, and he was the only one in that lot who understood what had happened. I nodded. I clapped with everybody else. I ate half a donut because leaving would have made it a story. Then I walked out to my truck. A man in a Navy windbreaker came across the gravel. Afton R. Yeager? That's me. He put an envelope in my hand and walked away. Inside, petition for appointment of guardian of the estate. Petitioner Dalton R. Yeager, respondent Afton R. Yeager. Behind it, a notice of hearing. April 28th, 9 a.m., Hollins County Probate Court. He called me a burden at 10 o'clock. At 10:20, a stranger handed me the paperwork proving he meant it. I drove to the Methodist church lot, dropped my tailgate and sat on it and read 14 pages in the sun. I still had donut sugar on my fingers. The petition said the respondent exhibits confusion, that the respondent is unable to manage his financial affairs, that the respondent depends entirely on his son for activities of daily living. And then it laid out the proof. A depleted savings account, a drawn-down home equity line, bills paid late, a man wholly reliant on the family living in his home. Every single item on that list was something they had done to me. They spent it, and then they filed paperwork saying the empty account was evidence I couldn't be trusted with it. Page 11 asked the court for authority over my pension, my Social Security, and the disposition of real property at 14 Fallow Road. The disposition of real property. That's when the 5-year window stopped being a phrase on a porch in the dark. Medicaid looks back 5 years at what a person gave away. Kendra's mother is in a facility. They wanted the deed moved, and the clock started. They weren't after this month's money. They were after the house Marguerite picked out in 1991. I sat on that tailgate about 20 minutes. Then I made 2 calls. The first was to the number on the back of a soft-cornered business card in my junk drawer. Delia Brandt. I got her voicemail on a Saturday and left my name and the case number off the top page. The second was to Marlene Kupfer's line at the credit union. "It's Afton Yeager," I said. "Monday, 9 o'clock. I'm ready to say it out loud." I did not go home that night. I slept in Vera's spare room. Nobody at my house noticed I was gone until Sunday afternoon. Monday, April 13th. I was standing outside the credit union at 8:58 when Marlene came to unlock the door. She looked at my face and didn't say good morning. She said, "Come on back." I put 3 things on her desk. A form folded in quarters soft from 11 months in a coat pocket. A cognitive screen dated January 9th, 29 out of 30, signed by Dr. Farrell. And a spiral notebook with my wife's pen still clipped to it. "All right," I said. "I want to do all of it." It took 41 minutes. We changed the online credentials. We revoked every saved device. There were 4, and one of them I'd never seen in my life. We killed the secondary debit card. We canceled all 11 automatic payments, and Marlene read each one out loud and waited for me to say yes, and I said yes 11 times. We froze the home equity line. We opened a new account, sole owner, no convenience access, statements to Post Office Box 44, and I signed the direct deposit change for the pension and for Social Security, voided check stapled to the top. 10 business days, Marlene said. The 1st of May it lands in the new account. She date-stamped every page and made me a copy of each one. When she read out payment number 11, we both stopped. Ardwick and Pell, attorneys at law. $1,850. "Afton," she said, "this is the firm on your petition." I know. 11 months I'd carried that form against my chest, sure it would feel like slamming a door. People expect a man to slam a door. All I did was answer a security question about my mother's maiden name. I walked out to the truck at 9:41. My phone buzzed before I got the key in. "Dalton, hey, card just got declined at the pump, lol. Try again." It took 3 days for the house to catch fire, and not one flame of it was mine. The card died at the Sunoco. It died at the grocery in front of a full lane. It died at the building supply with a load of gravel already in the truck. The streaming quit. The gym sent a notice. The storage facility in Ashford sent a past due on a unit in the name of Pruitt. Wednesday night they came at me in the kitchen, both of them standing, me sitting. Dalton got loud. I did not. I pushed 3 things across the table: the photocopied binder, 26 months, the notebook, and a copy of their own petition. "I'll be at the courthouse on the 28th, I said. "Dad, I'm not putting anybody out tonight. You'll get 30 days, in writing, same as any tenant in Ohio." Kendra sat down. That surprised me. She looked at the notebook at the dates running down the left margin in blue ink, page after page. "How long have you known—" I turned it to the front and put my finger on the first line. "September 14th, 2024. She went the color of the wall. 19 months. Every grocery run, every crying spell at the table, every $400 laid under the salt shaker, all of it logged in a spiral notebook 8 feet from where she stood. Dalton played his last card from the doorway. "You do this, you don't see Bo again." I looked at him a long moment. "You're welcome at my table," I said. "You're not welcome in my accounts." Those were always 2 different invitations. He went out to the driveway and made a phone call that lasted 40 minutes. Thursday morning, his attorney filed for emergency temporary guardianship. Let me pull out of it a second and tell you where my head was. I had 14 days until that hearing. I spent most of them awake wondering if a judge would take one look at a 67-year-old man with a spiral notebook and send me home. If you've made it this far with me, do me a favor and hit subscribe. What happened in that courtroom is the part I still can't get through without stopping. And if anybody ever handed you back your own money and waited on a thank you, say so below. All right, April 28th, Courtroom 2. Hollins County Probate is one small room with oak benches that complain when you sit down, a wall clock that runs 4 minutes fast, and a state flag gone pink at the folds. The gallery filled anyway, small county, Vera, Curtis, Pastor Rowe, Bonnie Stack from the chamber 3 rows back with her purse in her lap, and 4 people who'd stood in that gravel lot 17 days earlier and laughed. Bo was not there. I asked for that. Their attorney went first. Depleted accounts, late notices, a man dependent on his family. Then Delia Brandt stood up and put 3 things in front of Magistrate Voss. The cognitive screen from January, 29 out of 30, 26 months of statements in a black spine binder,
and a spiral notebook, handwritten, dated, unbroken, from September 14th, 2024. Marlene Kupfer testified, with my written authorization. She confirmed the account had always been titled to me alone. She walked the court through which device logged in on which date. She testified that on April 13th, the sole account holder came to her desk and ended every access himself and signed each revocation. Magistrate Voss took his glasses off. "Counsel, what is the total figure?" Delia read it into the record. $71,480, Your Honor, across 26 months. None of it authorized in writing. The clerk stopped typing. 3 full seconds of nothing in that room. I counted them the way you count between the flash and the thunder. Then Bonnie Stack's chair moved an inch, and she looked at the floor and kept looking at it. Voss turned a page. "Mr. Yeager, one item. There's a payment of $1,850 to petitioner's counsel." He looked up. "Drawn from the account of the man petitioner alleges lacks capacity." Nobody answered him. He asked me if I wished to be heard. I stood up. "Your Honor, I'm not asking the court to punish my son. I'm asking it to give me back the right to say no." Voss dismissed the petition. He found no evidence of incapacity. He dismissed the emergency application with it. He referred the file to Adult Protective Services for the county, and he ordered Dalton to submit a detailed accounting of the expenditures within 30 days. Then he asked my son one question about the storage unit, and my son came apart on the stand. It all came out at once the way it does. He'd been fired in 2023, not laid off, falsifying his hours on the timesheet, which is why there was no unemployment. He'd lied to me about that for 14 months. They lost the house in a short sale. The truck was $41,000 upside down. Kendra's mother's facility runs $4,100 a month, and they'd been carrying it since the spring of 2024. And yes, they'd talked to a lawyer about moving the deed on Fallow Road before the 5-year look-back. "I didn't set out to be this," he said. "It just got easier every month." I believe that. That's the terrible part. I sat on that oak bench and I believed my son completely. He'd been scared for 26 months. He'd just decided every single month that I was the one who should pay for it. Vera reached over the back of the bench and put her hand on my shoulder and left it there. Outside on the courthouse steps, Kendra caught up to me in the wind. She didn't apologize. I'll give her this. She didn't insult me with one. "He was going to tell them you left the stove on," she said. "There was a whole page about it. And," she looked out at the parking lot, "I'm the one who took that page out." I met Gil Tanner out at the bay on Route 41 the following Tuesday. I didn't try to weasel out of that guarantee. I signed it. Nobody held my hand and made the letters. "I want out of the 36 months, I said. "Tell me the number." He chewed on it, looking at the gravel. 2 months, 4,300, and we're square. I wrote him a check on the new account, and it was the most expensive lesson of my life about reading past the colored tabs. The truck went first, 4 payments behind and no guarantor left standing, so the bank came for it on a Thursday morning while I was mowing. 9,100 still owed on it in Dalton's name only. The equity line closed permanently. The 7,500 rolled into a 24-month note with my name on it, and I pay it on the 1st, and I will until it's gone. Yeager and Son hauling and site services lasted 17 days. I was there when Tanner's man peeled the vinyl off the roll door. He worked a corner up with a plastic blade, and the whole thing came away in one long strip in the cold, the way they do. But the ampersand and the last 3 letters tore loose separate and landed face up on the gravel. And Son. Gold on blue curled at the ends. I picked it up, folded it twice, and put it in my coat pocket. I couldn't have told you why. I still can't entirely.
I paid $4,300 for a signature I didn't read. That one's mine. I'm not going to stand here and pretend it isn't, but I'd have paid it twice to get my name off that door. I gave them 30 days in writing, dated the way Ohio requires. I didn't change the locks, I didn't shut off the power, or clear a shelf in the refrigerator. Whatever else was true, my grandson was sleeping under that roof, and a boy shouldn't have to feel the temperature drop in a house. One night, in the second week, Kendra sat down across from me at the kitchen table, with Dalton out at his brother-in-law's. She told me the real numbers. $4,100 a month for her mother. Collections calling the cell from 4 different area codes. She'd been sitting in the car at the laundromat lot to cry, because there was nowhere in my house that was hers. I knew it was wrong by month 4, she said. Why keep going? Because I picked my mother. She said it straight at me, no tears in it, which took something. I'd pick her again. I'd just do it different. I didn't forgive her that night. I'm not built to do it that fast. I said the only true thing I had. You should have asked me. I'm not made of money, Kendra. But I'm made of a man who says yes when he's asked. She was quiet a while. Then she told me what was in the storage unit in Ashford. Her mother's whole house. 43 years of it. Kitchen table photo albums, a piano nobody can play packed into a 10 by 20 concrete box at $94 a month. My pension had been quietly holding on to a woman's entire life, a woman I have never met. I paid the last 3 months on that unit, then I stopped, and I told Kendra I'd paid it, out loud, at the table, so nobody would ever mistake it for something I did in secret. Dalton called on a Sunday, soft voice, the old one from before. He had a proposal, a monthly amount back on autopay, and they'd stay in the district. Bo wouldn't have to change schools. Bo could come by anytime, anytime. 26 months, and that was the easiest offer to say yes to, sitting in my kitchen with the notebook in the drawer and the sound of nothing upstairs. No, I said. Dad, he's 9. I'm not buying time with my own grandson. If you want to move him, that's on you. I'll be right here every Saturday either way. He hung up on me. 3 weeks, 21 days. I kept the shop swept. I left the rocket ship lamp plugged in at the outlet by the bench, and it stayed lit in there past midnight because I didn't want to be the one who turned it off. The low stool at the workbench stayed at the workbench. I want to be honest about those 3 weeks. That's the only stretch of the whole 2 years I came close to calling and offering the money. Then, on the 4th Saturday, a car came up the gravel with no warning. Kendra parked, put her window down, and stayed in the driver's seat with a paperback. 2 hours, she said. I'll be right here. Bo came across the yard and into the shop and stood there looking at the bench, and then at me, and then he asked exactly one question. Is the ceiling fan next? I had to turn around and get a wrench off the pegboard before I could answer him. The Hollins County Ledger never ran a word about the courthouse. Small towns don't. But everybody knew inside of a week. Bonnie Stack found me in the plumbing aisle at the building supply. She's not a bad woman. She was holding a bag of hose clamps and couldn't look up from them. I should have asked you, Afton. She did look up then. I asked him. That's all she said. Around here, that's an apology with the roof on it. The girl at the hardware register went back to a normal volume and never mentioned it, and I never mentioned it. Marlene called in June and asked if I'd sit down with 2 other members for 20 minutes, retirees. Same shape of trouble earlier innings. I said yes. I brought the notebook and walked them through the 7 things I did at her desk in order and made them write the order down themselves. The moving truck came on day 30. Kendra shook my hand at the front step and held it a second longer than a handshake. Bo hugged me in the driveway and told me not to do the ceiling fan without him. Dalton stayed in the cab with the engine running and did not get out. Vera came over that evening with coffee cake, and this time she came inside. She sat at my table and told me she'd nearly called Adult Protective Services in the fall of 2024. She'd had the number written down. She didn't call because she was afraid of losing a friend. She apologized for staying quiet. I told her I'd stayed quiet for 2 years in my own kitchen, so she'd have to get in line. Then she went home and the house was empty, and for the first time in 26 months I had no idea what to do with an evening. May 1st, 6:02 in the morning. I was on the porch with coffee and my phone, and the notification came up, and there it was. $2,740. New account. Sole owner. I didn't spend a dime of it that day.
I sat there and looked at it while the fog came off the field across the road, and then I went inside and made eggs. That summer I fixed what had been broken for 2 years. The storm door hinge that had been sagging since the first winter. The outside spigot that dripped all through 2025. The crooked back step Marguerite and I never got to, which took me one Saturday and $11 in lumber. I got the crown. Sat in that chair and let the man do it and paid for it out of checking. I put the supplemental insurance back. I pay the equity note on the first of every month, $321, and I've never been late. And in June I opened a 529 for Beau, $150 a month. I'm the sole custodian. Nobody withdraws from it but me, and I can't withdraw it for anything but that boy's education. Then I did something I'd have been too proud to do 2 years earlier. I mailed Dalton the account number and a letter, and I kept a copy. I'll fund the boy's future. I won't fund his father's truck. Those aren't the same kind of love, and I'm done pretending they are. The notebook went back in the kitchen drawer next to her pen. I thought about burning it. I've thought about it a few times since. It's still in the drawer. October, 6 months out. Dalton works nights at the Hollins Quarry, $22 an hour. They've got a 2-bedroom out past Ashford, 11 miles from here. They're paying it down. Slow. The court ordered an accounting and it turned into $200 a month for 60 months no interest, and he's made everyone so far. He called on a Tuesday. Didn't ask for anything. Could I come to dinner? I said yes. And then I said the rest of it because I'd learned what happens when I leave the rest of it unsaid. 3 things. We don't talk money at that table. Nobody in this family has a key to this house but me. And whatever you need, you ask me for it out loud. You don't assume it. There was a long pause on the line. Okay, he said. Dinner was awkward. I'm not going to sell you something prettier. Beau did most of the talking about a science unit on circuits and about how his grandfather already taught him the real rule. Kill the power first, then you check. Nobody apologized properly. Not that night, not since. And somewhere between the pot roast and the pie, I realized I'd stopped needing it. Here's what 2 years cost me, and what it bought. I used to think that if I quit giving, I'd be quitting on my family. That was the whole chain. That was the promise I made in that hospital room. Or that's what I told myself it was. It turns out I had it backwards. I did not find out who actually wanted to sit at my table until I stopped paying them to be there. Beau comes every Saturday. We finished the ceiling fan in September. We're rewiring a radio from 1961 now, and it's going badly, and neither of us is in a hurry. Last month I repainted the mailbox, sanded it down, primed it, 2 coats of black, and then I lettered it by hand with a brush the way my father did ours in 1968. A. Yeager, 14 Fallow Road. One name. The piece of vinyl's still out in the shop in the bottom of the toolbox under the roll of electrical tape. Gold on blue, curled at the ends. Beau found it in August digging for a nut driver. What's this? That's a word somebody added to my name without asking me. He turned it over a couple times. Are you going to put it back on something? No, I said. I'm going to keep it where I can see it. He thought that was a strange answer. He's 9, he'll get there. Marguerite's dogwood bloomed late this year, almost the end of April, right around the hearing. I still water it in a dry August, the same as she did, and I still talk to it a little, which I'd deny if you asked me in town. I'm 67 years old. I gave 34 winters to a rural electric co-op, and I never once fell off anything until a Saturday in March. That fall cost me 2 years. Getting up cost me 1 password. Now let me step out of the story one last time and ask you something. If you'd been standing in the back of that gravel lot, would you have changed the password sooner? Or would you have waited the way I did, for the boy's sake? There's no wrong answer. I've argued both sides with myself at 2 in the morning. Tell me below and tell me where you're watching from. If this one stayed with you, there are more waiting for you in the description. I'll be right here, same table, door unlocked.